Hello, everybody, and welcome back. It's been a little bit of time since we've done the Daily Shag, but I'm trying a new format out, some things that I want to test out for future broadcasts and for future content on this channel. So if you're here now watching live, I appreciate you guys, of course. Always make sure you hit the like button, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and leave comments where you can. Going through a couple of different segments today because news is just out of control. It's out there and people are consuming it. Sometimes it's wrong, sometimes it's nuts. But I'm trying to create an angle here that might benefit people down the road. How does a dad, someone who's trying to raise the next part, the next generation, how are they approaching news? How am I approaching dadhood? How am I approaching the world at large? And this news, how do I consume it? So this is sort of a look into that and ways we can kind of clip things out. Patrick, welcome to the stream. Good to see you, man. Appreciate it. So we're going to start getting into the news here. We're going to see what exactly is going on and some things that, well, some things that have sort of come to light, but also that are troubling and I'm worried about. We'll start off light. We'll start off light because this doesn't so much relate to this particular topic doesn't really relate to fatherhood necessarily, but also it has to do with sort of the with how the world is going as far as video games and entertainment goes. The first two things we'll talk about. So in this article, we share here for you guys. In this particular article, we're seeing the ex-BioWare dev says no one there believes in BioWare magic. Anthem 2 was really fun, but that is when EA canned it. So I wanted to share this article because, and even talk about what's been going on with this game, because Anthem, even though it's long in the past, it's ancient history as far as gaming is concerned. What we're seeing is a sort of a broader telltale sign of Hollywood and also gaming is that we're just putting content out there and we're not vetting it. We're not seeing how real good it is. We're just sort of going through the motions. We need to put product out. We need people to consume this product and then move on to the next product. And one of the common threads we're seeing here is this is sort of comes up because of the Lord of the Rings game. Lord of the Rings Gollum dropped, and it didn't go too well, they said. While the PCG review found the game had some redeeming features, technical issues on other platforms contributed to the game receiving some terrible review scores, to the extent the studio felt the need to issue an apology and some bug squishing promises. So this is something that's happening throughout the gaming industry. A lot of the games that have come out in recent history, some of these big releases that have been coming out, have all been followed up immediately with, I'm sorry, there's lots of bugs. I'm sorry we couldn't get to these fixes. And of course, it all comes out later that maybe we should have taken a little bit more time. And these are things that gamers in general have been saying out loud for a long time. And let's just say this one more time for the devs that might catch this later on. We would rather you wait for the game to be finished and you to take your time than to put something out that is full of bugs, that doesn't run properly on our machines or our consoles for that matter. So please take your time. One particular story was shared at some length and will make sad reading for many Iron Man fantasists out there. Developer Ian Saterdalen is currently a lead producer at Mythical Games, before which he worked in various roles at Crystal Dynamics, Blizzard, Riot, and then BioWare at the time of Anthem's extremely rushed development. Anthem is a game that I have been able to mess around with here and there, and I've really enjoyed the gameplay aspect of it, the sort of Iron Man simulator that everyone really enjoyed. I love it. And I think the combat in it is fluid. It's really nice. I think the story behind it, there's a great skeleton there, but we're lacking quite a bit. We're lacking quite a bit overall in the game. And this article talks a little bit about it. Anthem was once the next big thing for BioWare, and or that's how it was sold by the publisher EA anyway. But on launch, It felt unfinished, most notably lacking an endgame, but with the host of other problems. BioWare went to triage mode on Anthem shortly afterwards, with a plan morphing into something called Anthem Next or Anthem 2, a full-scale rework of the game, which got well underway before EA pulled the plug. Now, full-on reworks and remakes or even sequels to games oftentimes work out. If you don't believe me, take a look at something like Final Fantasy XIV, which was a giant failure at its launch, but after many reworks, twists and turns, it came back as a Realm Reborn, and now it's one of the most popular MMOs ever made. So they go on, Sader Dallin says, I learned a lot on this project. We knew it wasn't ready, as this game was literally created in 15 months, which is unheard of for a game of that scope. Anthem 2 would have been great. So as you guys may have known, this game, so Anthem, it's still running, the servers are still up, but they're not supporting it any longer. So the game that's out there is there. Nothing new is coming in the future. So it's something that, again, the game exists, but there's no more development happening, and the Anthem Next project is gone. Many found that the 15-month figure nigh unbelievable. Sader Dallin went on to clarify that lots of concepts and world-building work was done before this period, but I'm sure 18 months before ship is when the first level and Ranger Javelin were started. 15 months is when I started, and the Ranger was not finished, and the world crashed every 2 to 3 minutes. This is quite the big tell-all for this particular game. Everyone expected Anthem to be one of the biggest hits ever, a massive looter shooter that would compete with Destiny 2, and it fell off and fell apart well before it could hit the ground running. Again, the level design was brilliant, the world design brilliant, combat was fun, the flying was amazing and polished, but beyond that, a lot was lacking. So the story is a familiar one, and not in a good way. Sader Dallin says EA had their reasons for wanting to hit a ship date, but it was the dev team that had to pay the price. The price being 90-hour weeks for 15 months. It wasn't sustainable, and not even a position we could have been in. I'm fine now, but not without damage. I don't blame these guys or this industry for being so tough. The dev team is out there grinding it day after day, trying to get this stuff done. And it speaks to a higher problem in Hollywood and movies, is that they don't really care necessarily about the content within. They just need to hit a certain date because of shareholders or whatever. And then beyond that, they don't really care very much. When gamers just want a good experience, something they can come back to day after day after day and enjoy and be willing to pay the $60, $70 price tag now. But a lot of these games are shooting themselves in the foot by requiring a day 1 patch, day 2 patch, and an official PR apology letter stating that they're sorry. We didn't know that all this stuff was wrong, when they likely knew everything was wrong. It's not a surprise that we find ourselves in this position with games nowadays, and people coming out and sharing this. I'm sure his NDA dropped, and now he's able to speak his mind. But it speaks to a larger problem, that we're rushing content, which leads, brilliantly over to our next story, where so we're seeing that Channing Tatum has a fear of streaming. He said there's less good storytelling and a lot more product out there, which I don't think anyone who watches this channel or who's been consuming media at a high rate is surprised at all. Just look at something like Star Wars, look at something like Marvel alone, you're realizing that these things are coming out quickly in large quantities, and we're just seeing a real decline in quality. But lots of quantity, but not a whole lot of quality. We'll see what he goes on to say. So he talks in this article about Magic Mike 2 and how when they made Magic Mike 2, they spent $12 million making the movie, and then had a $60 to $70 million marketing budget, which, for people who don't know, marketing budgets are humongous, and it's a huge part that's not always factored in to wins and losses when people talk about, well, they did really good at the box office. Yeah, but if they had a multi-million-dollar marketing campaign, they still have to make that part up in order to recoup their money. So in this case, Magic Mike cost $12 million. Magic Mike 2 rather cost $12 million to make. And they spent 60 to 70 million to market it, to get people in the theaters to go see it. Which again, it's for a movie like that can be hard to recoup. It's going for a very niche audience. And again, there is a point where we need to take a step back, and studios need to take a step back, and not every movie needs to be an art house production. There's always going to be your winners. There's always going to be your losers. But if these companies want to come back and start making money, Disney, if Disney wants to come back, Lucasfilm, Disney Lucasfilm wants to come back and make money. Disney Marvel wants to come back and make money. They need to learn to scale back the amount of content they're putting out and just put out the proper content, the proper amount of they need to focus on the storytelling aspect of it. Production value is another thing that we're starting to see sink. And all the while, this article is kind of funny because it ends with something like, Tatum's upcoming credits include starring role in Zoe Kravitz's directorial debut, P Island. We won't say that out loud because we don't want YouTube to get mad at us. And it is spearheading a reboot of the Patrick Swayze Demi Moore classic Ghost. So his current he says all this stuff about projects that he's the projects sorry guys, the projects he's a part of are not exactly killing it as far as the quality content, but his concern of Hollywood and where it's going in terms of directorial, the streaming models. This is something that's, I think, an important message, and that we need to have more people speaking out about this. And we have people stepping up in Hollywood saying, hey, there's a big issue with the amount of content we're putting out. It's not quality. People aren't seeing it. We're not making the money back. Why are we continuing to do this? Right? It's like sitting down at a table day after day and eating yourself silly and wondering why you're getting fat. Like not knowing limitations. Oh my God, I'm eating all this healthy food. I just eat salads all day, and then I have 13 Nutri-Grain bars. Like it's healthy. Why am I still gaining weight? It's because you don't understand. Like they don't understand how this works. They don't understand what the audiences want. That's where people need to really take a step back. Hollywood needs to take a step back. There's a lot of different things going on as we continue to talk about the different issues in Hollywood. Hollywood's really seeing, I think Hollywood in general is seeing a place where, Hollywood has become a place now that I don't think has much integrity left in it. And when we look at movies and actors like The Flash, Ezra Miller's had his issues in the past, and we've had a couple articles written over the years now in regards to Ezra Miller and his problems, his legal issues. And now the Flash director says he won't recast Ezra Miller in the potential sequel. No one can play that character as well as they did. So I did a video some time ago, and later on I'll post that right up here that you can look at as the double standard that we're seeing with different Hollywood actors, where we have someone like Chris Pratt who discusses his faith and is not shy about his faith in Christianity and his love for God, and he's oftentimes looked down on because of those views. People say he's extreme, he's right wing, and that's not an acceptable thing to be in Hollywood. But then you have something like Ezra Miller, where you have a ton of legal trouble, where just a few years ago he choked out a woman in an Iceland bar. He got into an altercation and a fist fight in the same bar. And then a couple of years after that, he's charged with felony burglary. he's assaulting people in Hawaii. Like all of these things add up as to something. And even though, and then later on, he did come out and apologize and said, "I'm sorry. I have mental health issues to work on," and he's trying to get those in order. Those things are forgiven by the mainstream media. They're forgiven by the public. But Chris Pratt, on the other hand, has to, check his religion at the door. Couldn't possibly, be tolerant of something like that. So now we're seeing the director saying that there's no one else that can play. Ezra Miller is the only person that can play this character the way they played it. So Ezra Miller will continue being the Flash as long as director Andy Muschietti is involved in Warner Brothers' superhero franchise. During an interview on the Discourse podcast, Muschietti said he has no plans to recast Miller despite the actor's history of legal troubles and alleged abuse. Now, I will be clear. Chris Pratt did not get recast of anything because of his religious beliefs. My issue is that we're seeing the divisive nature of the left against the right when it comes to religion. They think that Chris Pratt is trying to force his religion on people by talking about God while accepting awards and all that. And that makes him someone who's intolerant, who's a right-wing extremist and doesn't like certain people. But we need to forgive Ezra for his past transgression, his well-documented violence against both women and men, and his history with burglary, stealing. We have to forget that, and it should be tolerated. Even though it's been a repeat offense over and over again that he's had committed violence against other people, stolen things from other people, and a few other allegations as well, which I won't mention right now. If the sequel happens, Ezra Miller will be back as the Flash. I don't think there's anyone that can play the character as well as they did. The other depictions of the character are great, but this particular vision of the character, they just excelled in doing it. And as you said, the two Barrys, it feels like a character that was made for them. The Flash producer Barbara Muschietti added, "In principal photography, Ezra was brilliant and the most committed and the most professional actor. Ezra gave everything for his role, physically, creatively, emotionally. They were absolutely supreme." And I have to say, as an aside, it seems really difficult to talk like this when you're referring to one person as they or them. But, far be it for me to judge someone and how they want to be called. I said, it is what it is. So this goes to detail the allegations over the past couple of years and provide links to each of them. What I'll say is Miller was cited in Vermont with felony burglary last year. In 2020, the actor made headlines after a recording surfaced in which they appeared to be choking a woman outside of a bar in Iceland. No charges were filed. The actor was also arrested twice in Hawaii in 2022, once for disorderly conduct and harassment. In the Hawaii incidents, Miller pled no contest to a single account of misdemeanor disorderly conduct, which I think he was shouting and yelling in this bar, so causing like big disturbance, and paid a $500 fine and a $30 in court fees. The harassment charge was dismissed. Now, I can speculate that these charges were dropped because he just paid the people off and he said, here's some money. Don't say anything. I won't say anything. There'll be nothing, So I can speculate and say that was it. I don't know why people wouldn't press charges if they're being choked out, if they're being harassed, etc. Variety exclusively reported last August that Miller was seeking treatment for complex mental health issues after going through a time of intense crisis. Now, to be fair, everyone goes through times of intense crisis. They feel that they need to, regroup. I've seen therapists many times before. It feels good to do that sort of thing. But again, we are still making excuses for someone who has committed violent behavior against someone else. Everyone's allowed to grow beyond a certain point. We shouldn't take every single thing we do in the past, but we should certainly be aware of what happened in the past and apply it to how we treat people today and the opportunities we give them today. Ezra went on to say, "I want to apologize to everyone that I have alarmed and upset with my past behavior. I am committed to doing the necessary work to get back to a healthy, safe production stage in my life." And hey, good for him if that's what it is. But what I will say, and how this sort of ties into my theme of of being a dad, there's two facets to this. One, we have to, of course, we do have to judge people on what they have done in the past, but it's not a complete picture. We do need to judge people on what they're doing to correct the past. Now, I don't know exactly what it is that Ezra Miller is doing in order to make himself a better person. Perhaps he has been going to intense therapy for the past couple of years or for the past year. I don't know. And if that's the case, hats off to him. But what I will say is that we need to look at how we treat individuals. And again, this goes back to my video on Chris Pratt and Ezra Miller. And just conservatives in general are taken as really divisive and awful people. Now, my particular history with conservatives is that they're pretty nice, salt of the earth people, and they generally just want to be left alone. Now, if they don't agree with your lifestyle, that's neither here nor there. If they're trying to force something onto your life, again, that's an issue. It doesn't matter if it's left, right, center. Anyone trying to do that, probably not such a great person. So again, how this relates back to me being a parent, how I look at this in teaching my kids, is that I need to apply judgment equally across how people are acting. Now, if someone is objectively trying to better themselves through God, through therapy, through self-reflection, that's all good. And we should take that into consideration while we're judging someone. I think that this is a point that we're starting to lose the narrative in life. I think it's easy to bash Ezra Miller for his lifestyle and how he conducts himself, but we have to be fair in our application, again, of forgiveness, right? Because if someone does something bad, we need to forgive them as they start to progress forward and become a better person. But they need to be self-aware enough to know this is the case. Should Ezra Miller be recast? I don't think he's a great actor. I think that the actor in the TV show is far better than Ezra Miller in his portrayal of the Flash. That's just personal. That has nothing to do with what he did in real life. It has everything to do with how I perceive the actor and their ability to portray the character. But again, going back to how we move forward in the world is not continuing to judge people solely based on their actions, but how they're setting themselves up in the future. Are people genuinely trying to get better? There are things that are unforgivable. And assaulting a woman as a man or a non-binary person or whatever you want to call yourself you're dancing on the line of unforgivable. And if the roles were reversed, now remember this, and this is the other thing that we have to consider. If the roles were reversed and Chris Pratt had assaulted a woman in the way that Ezra Miller did, the world would be singing an extremely different tune. And people can say that I'm wrong. People can say that, oh, that's not happening. You're just saying that. I'm telling you, the way that someone like Chris Pratt is treated for just the acknowledgement of his faith, if you were to put this situation onto him, we would be all singing a different tune. Chris Pratt would be canceled from projects for many different reasons. And I think a lot of you can fill in the blanks as to why. But again, if we're going to move forward as people, as a group, this is where we need to start making changes. Understanding the behaviors and how we apply them to different people for different reasons. But all in all, I think Ezra Miller, has a lot of things going on in his head that he needs to figure out. And I think stepping away from acting would probably behoove him quite a bit. I spoke with this recently on an episode of Ready, Set, Shag. Carrie Smith and I were talking about how sometimes our own success just gets in our way and we need to step back from where we are and regroup and have faith again, whether that means praying, whether that means talking to someone, going to therapy, finding our solace, finding our place in the world, and finding out what's important again. Because at this point, someone like Ezra Miller is so involved with themselves that I don't think they really understand how they're affecting their outside world. And this isn't just affecting them with their words, right? Physically affecting other people, hitting them, standing in their face, like shouting them down for no reason, just because they've been drinking too much. Like, we need to regroup. There's been a big talk in the news about Target. All of you have heard at this point that Target has lost about $10 billion in 10 days as the stocks fall following the boycott over the LGBTQ-friendly kids clothing line. So I want this, I think there's something interesting about this whole thing, because so basically how it happens is that the valuation of the company per, the stock price went from 160.96 a share. And then after the Pride collection dropped, it went down to 138.93 a share. So when you do the math, the loss is around $10 billion, which is a lot of money. $10 billion is a lot of money to lose. So this tells me one major thing, that this goes beyond conservatives, right? People want to say like, oh, conservatives don't want your kids in rainbows. That's what people say. But with a number this big in a boycott this scale, it's beyond just conservatives. I think even like your center right and center left are still are in this space where they're saying, I don't think this is what we want, and this is what we mean. And I've had an interesting discussion with people on my Facebook timeline about this. And I think something that progressives lose in perspective is that there are conservative, like, gay people, there are conservative trans people, there are conservative LGBTQ all across the board that disagree with the Pride movement. That I even saw a funny video the other day of a guy saying, you know what, I'm going back in the closet. Can't do this anymore. And these people are not taking into account that there are voices that don't need this. Like, I just want to live my life. It is not helpful to be a part of this movement that wants to be in every single facet. It doesn't make sense. Like, let us just be. And those are voices I really enjoy listening to because they have a totally different perspective. If I only listened to the news, I would think that those people don't even exist. The left would have me believe that gay conservatives don't exist. They're not real things. And much to my delight, they do exist. So I think there's a huge sect of people that aren't conservatives, that are a part of this boycott movement. Now, this brings me to another point, because the right spent a long time talking about how cancel culture is a tool of the left. And as soon as these things like Millen Mulvaney come up on the Bud Light can, or Target loses $10 billion and everyone's boycotting the Pride stuff, I can't help but think that conservatives are now engaging in cancel culture. Now, people boycotting something is different than, if something comes up on your feed, or you're seeing something pop up in a store and then you choose not to support that store, like, that is, you're well within your rights, and that's what people do. The issue becomes, for me, is when people get online and they start talking on Twitter, on Facebook, or whatever about, we need to mobilize and we need to not buy these things. Gotcha. We caught you, right? And this is not an attack on any individual that I might know or have said these things. I don't care what people do. I don't care what people buy. But I think we have to acknowledge the fact that people who consider themselves conservative, who have been battling the cancel culture movement from the left on the right, are now engaging in their own version of it. And this, folks, is, again, don't become the dragon that you've been trying to slay, right? This is where the lesson comes in for me when I think about my kids, and when I think about, the next generation of adults. How are we teaching them to be better than the people that we are? Right? Because there's plenty of evidence, and I see my friend talk about it all the time, that how the boomers just let everything go to crap and made their kids work for everything when they were given everything. Like, they inherited a bunch of good stuff and then they just they squandered it all. We can't do the same thing. We have to be the ones that are teaching our kids to be better overall. You don't want to buy something, just don't buy it. You don't need to get on your soapbox and talk about it and try and mobilize people to cancel it. Again, you're becoming the thing that you were fighting against. It's okay to disagree with someone's politics. It's okay to disagree with the messaging from companies like Target and Patagonia and Bud Light and Miller Lite. We can all disagree with how the messaging comes across, because it's patronizing and stupid and just totally like off brand, right? But mobilizing people to not buy a product is cancel culture. It's just another form of it. And we can't be a part of that, because that's not the solution. We just thought for years, because people were getting canceled over their opinions. YouTube still will cancel people over their opinions on certain issues regarding your health, regarding certain public figures. We have to be better than them. Just don't consume their product. You don't agree with what Target's doing? Don't buy from them. That'll show them. It's proof. The proof is in the pudding right here. The proof is in the pudding. A $10 billion loss in 10 days? That's insane, friends. That is insane. Remember that. Remember this. Like, now there is cancel culture plays a part in it, but there's a lot of people who aren't mobilizing on Twitter. It's the other thing to remember when you're engaging with stuff online. And this is kind of an aside to what we've been talking about. Outrage is sort of manifested in these online spaces and then kicked around through the echo chambers, right? So it doesn't matter if you're on the left or on the right. When we see something we don't like, we enhance it and share it to the point where we're enraged. Do I believe that, do I care that Target sells these products? Part of me says no, because I'm not going to buy them anyway. The other part of me believes that the way that we're operating in the space of children right now, we don't understand how it's going to affect them. We are in a place where we are pushing ideals onto kids and not just living out our lives within our own spaces. We live our lives as if every single thing we do is affecting the entire planet. We live less in our community and more in the online digital space, thinking that those virtues will sort of permeate through the world. We don't. These are empty. This is an empty virtue signal on the part of Target. You sell clothes that people can fit into. You could put rainbows on it, but does it need to be labeled as pride? I don't think so. Again, I think introducing this stuff to kids at a young age, it's pushing and pulling them in different directions that they wouldn't have otherwise known and aren't required to know. Right? My kid's he's going to be 6 years old next week, and he has never once asked me anything in regards of LGBTQ. Not once. Because it's not in his brain. What's in his brain, you ask? Super Mario, coloring, painting, baseball, and video games. And Super Nintendo and Nintendo Switch. All these things. I say it over and over again because that's the stuff he's into. He's not into this. He doesn't care. But the more you talk about this stuff and the more this stuff becomes a focal point in your life, the more it pushes kids in that direction. If I remove certain stimulus from my kid's life, he's going to know it's gone and he's going to start going somewhere else. And if I introduce something in its place, they now will start gravitating to that, because that's what kids do. Kids are gravitating towards things that they like, but things that are put in front of them. If I never let my kid use my Nintendo Switch, he would have found out at a later time what video games are. It would have taken him longer to get there. Kids are products of their environment. And if their environment is surrounded by rainbows and this and that, that's what their life will be. Now, something I feel is really annoying that people have to continually say is like apologize. Like I have nothing against the LGBTQ community. I have nothing but love for them. Everyone should live their life the way they want to live it. The problem becomes when things are forced at the forefront, when we're putting products out there that are meant to tuck your genitals, when you're meant to, when we start pushing these different ideological things on kids who don't even have the capacity to understand what it is, but are being told that they should do it if they feel a certain way. We've never once in the world just guided decision-making based on how a child felt. It was up to the adults. The adults were there to guide a kid, to help them understand what they were feeling and how some feelings are harder to deal with than others. This is a really big change from where we are today. Here, we're just supposed to validate every weird feeling that we have. I think you can understand the problem that could be associated with that. I don't need to tell you. I think you guys know. Nasmer said, I would say cancel culture is on an individual level. Targeting and harassing individuals to harm the employability, the multinational conglomerates don't count. Yeah, but it's still in the same vein. Like, I agree and I disagree. Patrick's been chatting a lot. Sorry I haven't been paying attention too much to chat. I'm kind of going to be using these to chop up everything and make videos later. Bud Light hired Dylan to appear to the next generation, targeting children. Essentially, any other time alcohol company targets kids, it would be a huge issue. Teens care about. I have 2 high school freshman boys. I'm spamming your chat, but I always wonder how a child can consent to changing their gender, but cannot consent to sex. This is a good question. So the question being, how can a child consent to changing their gender, but not consent to sex? Right. Well, and here's the thing too. We've seen over the past couple of years that certain places are trying to remove the age of consent, lower it, or, and this is the most egregious part, is trying to normalize the idea of MAPS, right? MAPS is a big push. There's a big push to recognize MAPS as a sexual orientation and as something that, people should just accept on a societal level, which is really bad. But again, I would say that if the reason that we're seeing this targeted at children is because they're easy targets, and because a lot of times, especially in public schools, the parents aren't aware of what's going on. The kids go to school for 7-8 hours and they come home, and the parents have them for a very small amount of time. So the easiest place to get them is that they're with an adult that they don't know, but they're meant to trust implicitly because they are a teacher. We're told, trust your teachers, listen to your teacher. They know what they're talking about. But now we're starting to see parents pay attention to what's going on, because a lot of the stuff has been brought to light. Whether it was 1 or 2 cases to start, everything ramped up so quickly within the public school system. Now the parents have caught up and are starting to go to the meetings, and they're starting to see what it is that they are reading in school, starting to understand and hear what their assignments are. So again, people are tuned in, but kids are highly malleable. As you know, kids can be influenced heavily, especially at a young age, to think one way or the other, or at least guide them towards something. because you're constantly talking about it, influencing it. You're always talking about what your sexual orientation is, if you're always talking about the kind of people you sleep with, if you're always talking about genders, these kids will start to question it, and that's essentially what they're wanting. Now, what the broader why they're doing it, like, I can only speculate. I'm sure there's a lot of people who have guesses as to why this thing is happening. And one of the theories is that it's a population control thing, because when you get kids onto hormone blockers and you get them onto puberty blockers and HRT, it could essentially sterilize them or make it very difficult to have children later in life, or if they decide to detransition. So again, it's a form of population control in a world that's already declining in population. Patrick says, I've dated a ton of teachers. Trust me, these people are lunatics. Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like we've come a very, very long way from the teachers that I had growing up, who seemed like sensible people for the most part. I mean, they're essentially boomers, but like and I mean that as like they're the baby boomers. So seeing like where we are now and how, where these schools are just being filled with ideologues, it's very troubling. It's very troubling to see. As sort of a bonus, I want to read through this article with you guys because it's something that I saw pop up. It's an older article, but I think it speaks to a larger issue that we're seeing in society right now. So this is from the Philadelphia Inquirer. To end fat phobia, we need to dismantle Western civilization, says Philly therapist Sonali Rachatoire. The activist therapist, which sounds like an absolute nightmare to begin with, who posts at the Fat Sex Therapist on Instagram, discusses the philosophies behind her popular posts. Sonali hadn't planned on being a therapist growing up. Her career path, she explained, while sitting in the waiting room of Radical Therapy Center, the practice she co-owns in West Philadelphia, just kind of happened. Which I would think that you would want to have some sort of love for this field to get into it. Rachatoire, now 31, endured an abusive relationship in her 20s, which is awful. No one's making excuses for that. After college, she started volunteering for a domestic violence response team, and an experience that showed her that she enjoyed working with other people who had lived through traumas. All of my work is to better understand what I've experienced, said Rachatoire, who graduated from Temple University in 2011. It's almost like I'm healing younger versions of myself by trying to find language to describe what happened. See, I feel like this should have been worked through prior to her being, but like working through her own problems with her patients seems problematic. As the fat positivity movement has gained momentum, so too have the debates around how fat folks should lead healthy lives. Rachatoire, though, considers how sizeism is affected by racism, misogyny, classism, homophobia, transphobia, and ableism, and she counsels people against intentional weight loss. What? What? Like, I can't tell you how insane this truly is. We'll read through that again for people who didn't hear it. So the fat positivity movement has gained momentum. So too have the debates around how fat folks should lead healthy lives. You should absolutely lead a healthy life. Some people are fat in ways that are really hard to fix, whether it's like thyroid problems or whatever. But a majority of the people, a majority of the obesity, which is the leading cause of death in the world, obesity, being overweight, is the leading cause for death in the world, by the way. So this person is advocating for an unhealthy life, which to me, I don't know, man, seems a little weird. Rachatoire, though, considers how sizeism is affected by racism, misogyny, classism, homophobia, transphobia, and ableism, and she counsels people against intentional weight loss. Boy. She pointed to the work of artist activist Ashley Shackelford, who has written that wearing clothes from the boys' sections growing up when many items from girls didn't fit altered how Shackelford experienced gender. Rachatoire, who noted that people may perceive feminine bodies as more masculine if they feel fat, feels similarly about her upbringing. Being fat and being the eldest child, she said, made her feel less like a girl growing up. This is this is weird because like it's okay to feel this way. Like there's some people out there who feel like they feel more masculine. They don't feel like they have the shape of a woman. And I'm here to say too, like, I think women are beautiful regardless. Like, I think the female form, whether you have a more masculine form, like there is always something feminine about the body, like just biologically speaking. There are very rare occurrences where like a girl looks like a dude, like physically, and that might even be on purpose because they're going to the gym too much. Her perspective, one of a fat South Asian non-binary person, has gained enhanced notoriety through Instagram, where she often puts Telegram-like advice to the account. Last July, she celebrated 4,000 followers. Today, her follower count approaches 20 times that. 20 times. So again, this becomes another issue that people talk about, is the idea of social contagion, is the reason that these things spread the way they do. So this person who is very uncomfortable with their own self is trying to help other people who are extremely uncomfortable with themselves in fighting against imaginary problems. Again, it's different. If you experience firsthand people being nasty and mean to you, that is totally different. But just because someone says you should lose weight because it's objectively bad for your organs, like the fatter you get, the harder it is for your heart to pump. Like there's like actual scientific data on this, not just like me saying, "Oh, you should be thin." I mean, you should be, so when you walk up some stairs, you don't feel like you want to die. The reason I started working out again and losing weight was because every time I bent over to tie my shoes, I was out of breath. It was insane. I can't imagine being any bigger than I was. She posts her advice in colorful blocks of text. Your body is an heirloom. Do you consume porn with bodies that look like yours? And then expands on those concepts in the captions. Rachatoire traces contemporary fat phobia to colonial brutality and how enslaved people were treated. That's talk about a stretch. I hope she didn't pull a hamstring on that one. Citing researcher advocate Caleb Luna, Rachatoire said, curing anti-fatness would mean dismantling society's foundation. I love to talk about undoing Western civilization because it's just so romantic to me. The civilization that allows you to exist and thrive and have the following that you do and to be as successful as you are. Yes, let's dismantle that civilization. So people like don't quite understand the irony of what they say a lot of times. Because again, helping someone lose weight intentionally is objectively good for that person. Now, they should engage in that weight loss willingly. Nobody should be forced to run on a hamster wheel, against their will. Not saying that at all. But proposing that somebody could in fact lose weight and live a healthier life and live a longer life should be something to be celebrated, not looked down upon, or something that requires Western civilization, and a civilization that upholds about 500 million people. No, I think we've sort of lost the narrative at this point. And this person likely needs way more therapy than initially thought. Core member says, former teacher here, boomer, I was going to do substitute teaching after I retired 3 years ago. Then all hell broke loose. Wouldn't have lasted a week dealing with pronouns and gender affirming care. Yeah, I mean, it's wild. And seeing something like this, is even worse. We asked Rachatoire, a proud South Jersey native, about Instagram therapy, controversy over some of her comments, and how fatness affects sexuality. So it's been condensed for length and clarity. So this is her answering on the effects of fat trauma. What some folks think is trauma is like the event itself that happened, like the car accident that I got into is the trauma. but that's the event. What trauma is what gets stuck in my body. And that the way that I react when I'm in a car in the future and it stops really quickly, that's a trauma response. I guess I'm traumatized by the car accident, not by what gets stuck in my. I'm absolutely. I mean, it's both, isn't it? Isn't it both? What? And so when we internalize fat phobia, we really like personalize a fat traumatic experience. It can impact our sexuality by making it uncomfortable to receive a hug because we feel like the person hugging me is probably so repulsed by touching my body. Let's just get the hug over with quickly. That's projection. That's projection. You hate your body so much. You're putting that on someone else. And again, you're making it out as if they hate you because they're fat. No. I have fat people all the time. I love them because they're who they are. I'm not grossed out by them. I'm grossed out by someone who smells like they haven't showered in 2 weeks. I'm grossed out by people who like don't take care of their bodies by choice. But and yes, the argument could be made that you're not taking care of your body by choice by eating too much. What I'm talking about is the outward, like the smell and stimuli of you. If I can see like dirt and grime on you, yeah, I might be repulsed, but that has nothing to do with you being fat. People are like a response like this is totally idiotic. Even though sometimes we are starved for a skin touch, some of the fat clients that I work with, the only time when people touch their bodies is when they pay for a massage or when they're paying for Reiki or some other kind of somatic body work. And that can feel devastating when that's the only time that someone's affectionately, loving, caringly touching your body. There's a 1,000 reasons why someone might not want to touch you. One of those reasons might be that you are not engaging in any sort of like physical touch either, or you might be extremely standoffish. Again, a lot of this seems like projection to me, where they are thinking they don't like how they look, and they're thinking the same. They're thinking the person that they're with is thinking that same thing. When more often than not, people don't have the time to hate you over fatness. They have the time to hate you over how you treated them in the past. This is her talking about how self-worth can influence sexual interactions. When we teach someone to experience shame based on your body, whether it's about race, body size, disability, and we internalize that shame, we internalize the sense of our body having less worse than our bodies. You know, just because you say a lot of words in one sentence doesn't mean you've actually said anything. So I don't know that this is actually happening. Are people actually teaching others to shame based on body, race, to shame your body based on race, size, disability? I don't think this is happening. But according to her, because she said it and because she's a therapist, we have to believe it. When we internalize our low self-worth and our body having less value, we might be less likely to experience pleasure within a sexual relationship, or to ask for the type of touch we want and don't want within a romantic relationship, or to be able to even stop a sexual encounter when we want it to stop. This doesn't mean that someone has to accept you for being fat. This is also the solution to this is also to lose weight. Because most people are not morbidly obese. Most people find themselves in a category where I was, where I'm like 30, 40 pounds, even 50 pounds overweight, which is easily manageable, you know, back down to a size that you feel comfortable. But it requires people to challenge you to move forward and to experience a little pain in your life, because that's just what we have to do. If we want to grow, we're going to experience pain. There's even a term, growing pains, for little kids, because guess what? In order for them to grow beyond their small little form, they need to experience that physical pain. So the same thing is true in your head. And this person seems to have no clue about that. Just run from your problems, cut it out, get rid of it. Or no, just accept me for being a big slob. When body image abuse comes from a significant other. If we haven't received comprehensive sex education, we don't know what our sexual rights are and what our rights to pleasure are, the kind of treatment we deserve, and oftentimes we tolerate body image abuse from partners. I work with clients who are recovering from an experience with a sexual assault, and a partner will say, like, I get you're depressed, but like, it's been a week since we've been in the gym, and if your body changes because of this, I'm not in this. I'm no longer going to be attracted to you. I'm going to dump you. I'm going to leave this relationship. It's pressure to maintain a body size in order to maintain a relationship. It is again, these seem like pretty far-fetched examples, like singular examples. I don't know how many she's coming across in her practice, but people are allowed to like what they like. If they want a fit person, if they are with someone who was fit at one time and now they're eating themselves into oblivion and not trying to take care of their body, I would say that's something that they need to learn how to communicate with. Now, the person who is saying that they're going to leave if they don't get in shape, maybe they need to figure out how to communicate these things a little bit better. But communicating with your significant other about how you wish to be or the things that you like is not something that's bad. We are always going to come across things that we don't like and that we need to acknowledge with our partner. Hey, I see you're doing this now and I don't love it. I see that you're smoking more. Can you cut back on that? And especially if this relationship has not taken full flight. We're missing a lot of context from this particular example because, this is someone who's been married for 20 years. It seems a bit extreme. If these are people who have just been together for like 6 months to a year and aren't attached by marriage or children or anything, well, like they're well within their rights to leave because you're trying to figure out who this person is. And if this person is someone who's willing to let themselves go and not correct, toxic behavior, maybe you don't really need to be with them. There's lots to unpack in that particular article, and it's really unfortunate because, again, these are people who are lauded as therapists and lauded as people who like are the professionals, but I don't think they have the first clue about how to actually go about treating someone. Now, I'm not a therapist. Let's say that right now, but I think I think sheltering these people from the pain that they need to experience, not having them experience anything more, but the pain they need to experience is something that is really a detriment to them. More often than not, obesity is due to a lack of self-control, much like my smoking. It is not something to be praised if you don't have the willpower to change. Right. Smoking is an addiction. It's not the same. Yeah, it is. So smoking is sort of a chemical thing, but eating can be the very same. So eating, oftentimes the addiction is to the sugars. So Brahma said, addiction can be broken with self-control in the same way that the habit of eating your feelings can be broken. There is a chemical side to the smoking, but the self-control aspect is similar. I've actually quit smoking a few times. I haven't had a cigarette in almost 6 years. But I've always quit cold turkey. And so a lot of it was willpower for me. There's definitely a chemical side to it, especially when I smell cigarettes. Like it kind of like the nicotine gets me like, ooh. But eating does have a chemical side to it as well, because it's often the sugar that people become addicted to. And I'm guilty of it as well. Like as soon as I have something that's filled with sugar, whoo, off to the races, man. Nicotine is a full-blown physical addiction. Eating is as much a mental thing too. It can be. It can be. I think I would say that the degree of addiction on smoking is probably a little bit harder because of nicotine being the most addictive substance on the planet. Patrick says, pain is a great motivator. More people will take positive change in their life from pain when then they will positive reinforcement. Yeah. So this is something too that I will say some of the best periods of growth for me have been during extremely painful and awkward moments in my life. And I was humbled recently by one of my customers, and I thanked her the other day. I said, thank you for being honest with me. Thank you for telling me I did a bad job. This has helped motivate me to do better and get ahead of my work. And she was very surprised to hear me say that because, and I told her, I said, well, my whole life I've been told that my writing is great. It's awesome. It's good. This is perfect. And I said, that never has helped me. It's never helped me in the least to hear like, oh, you're great at this, or, oh, this is awesome. This story is perfect. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear what's wrong with it. I want to hear what's wrong with certain things that I do, because if I don't hear from people that are neutral third parties or people who are friends, I'll never see the things that are wrong, like how people perceive different things that I do. And especially with my creative stuff, if I write a story and I'm proud of it, and then someone reads it and goes, oh, this is awesome, and then I give it to like someone else to read, and they're like, what the dude, this is bad. Like these verb tenses are wrong, and like this character is acting completely different at the beginning. I need to know that sort of thing, because that way I can improve it to make it better. And then I know not to go back to that other person for advice ever again. Ezra says, Mars bars gets me going. Patrick said, I quit drinking from the pain it caused in my life. I would never have done it had my life turned to trash, right? We all experience things at a very different pace, and our experiences are very specific to who we are, and that's where I think the idea of my truth really gets out of hand, is that people don't realize that like the my truth movement, there is some truth to it, but it's been weaponized in a very weird way. Your truth goes as far as like this experience happened to you, and only you can understand how it affected you, and that should be how you carry yourself beyond it. No one needs to necessarily acknowledge your personal truth, but you need to acknowledge that personal truth in order to get past the other thing. It doesn't matter. Like, I could tell you that I was affected a certain way about something, but that doesn't mean that everyone needs to take that into consideration when making a decision, right? Sleazy, what's up, Sleazy? I wish I could get someone to critique my videos. I definitely want to do better. Yeah, I'll tell you, a lot of times the stuff with your videos is you watching it. I think the pain comes when you start paying for the editing factor, and stuff like that. That's the pain. The pain to the wallet. Oof. Y'all, thank you for joining me. This has been a great episode of the Daily Shag. So we're trying out a new format where I do a lot of stuff and we talk about topics on a daily basis, and then I'm able to sort of chop these up and put them out as videos that people can look back on, and have as sort of evergreen content on this channel, because right now it's a lot of live stream stuff. A lot of time after retiring, sugar is an addiction. Could always lose weight with keto, but sugar cravings kept killing it. Broke through 2 weeks ago when I had to buy new clothes. Yeesh, got big. Yeah, man. That I started telling myself I'm not buying new clothes. I'd already bought, I already started buying extra large, and I had been wearing large my whole life. But once my extra large started getting tight, I said, no more. I'm not getting any bigger. And tying my shoes. The fact I couldn't tie my shoes without losing my breath, that was it for me. So because of that, I said, I'm making a commitment to going to the gym. More importantly, I was making a commitment to eating better. I'll tell you what, guys, if you're interested in losing weight, like I would say 80% of your weight loss is going to be what you are eating and what you consume every day. Not eating over your caloric, like your recommended caloric intake will help a lot. And then hitting your macros as far as your protein, your vitamins, and all that stuff. Like that is so important that you can just do that and you'll lose weight quick. Because I would say most people I think are consuming well above their daily caloric intake. Melodic Method, what's going on? It says, I know that struggle. I used intermittent fasting plus an app called Zero. It's free. Help me make it through. Yep. I use what's the one I use? My Fitness Plan. What was called? MyFitnessPal. MyFitnessPal is something I used to use a lot to count all the calories up. Well, I was editing before and producing. You know that story, I think. Just making my own content sucks. I hear you, dude. I hear you. Well, I'm medium keto because I eat too much fruit because I lost 90 pounds since last met Suri. Damn, that's a lot of weight, dude. 90 pounds in a year? Well, it's awesome. I just bought a flat top 36-inch griddle for Father's Day. Not going to help my caloric intake. My girlfriend struggles with weight. I do not. I eat whatever I want when I want, and I never gain weight. Man, that's that awesome high metabolism, man. Counting macros definitely works, but it is also work. I am experimenting with IF and then just eating only meat, vegetables, and fruit, and that seems to be effective. It really is. Whole foods, guys, whole foods are really big. Get rid of like the bad sugars and get rid of the bad carbs like pastas. They're so bad for you. Unless, of course, you're like working out. Like working out will obviously facilitate the calorie burn, but you need to hit your macros big time. And just again, hitting your proper caloric intake will help you so much. A lot of method. Thanks so much for becoming a member on the channel. Really appreciate it. Dang. Like I said, 80. I would say 80% of weight loss is eating properly, and that's what I tell your wife. I would say figure out her figure out like how many calories she should be eating every day, and then just stick with that, because I would guarantee she's probably over by 1,000 calories at least. Serious breakthrough 2 years ago by just adding 10,000 steps a day. Those calves were sexy to find that summer. Hell yeah, core member. Hell yeah. And honestly, one of the easiest things that people can do is get a bike. 10,000 steps a day is awesome. All you do is go for a walk. But the other thing that's important is raising your heart rate, getting your heart rate up. Getting your heart rate up at a consistent, like, you know, like every time I do my cardio, I try and stick between like 150, 170 beats per minute. Like that's my zone. Patrick's a good dude. He follows me on Twitter. It's the same profile pic, and he has some funny responses sometimes. I don't know. I don't get to see him often here on the channel, but we're gonna start doing more streams like this. And like I said, I'll basically take it off I'll probably take it down, unlist it, chop it up, and then release these segments into individual videos so people can go back and check it out and see the commentary. As I get better at it, I'm not awesome at doing all the commentary stuff, but we'll have people chopping up the video and seeing how it goes. I live in Colorado. Just getting outside to walk gets the heart rate up. All these damn hills. Hey man, yeah, get out and walk. But if you're someone if you have a stagnant lifestyle, getting out there and doing a 10,000 steps in a day, it's a lot of walking. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of walking. So get out there, get your ass to the gym, start sweating. What did you do today? I only run when someone's chasing me. Nice. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for being a part of this stream. It's been awesome and fun as usual. I am going to hit the credits and acknowledge our paid members here on the channel, some of which I have to update because some of y'all didn't. So. But make sure you check out my locals. The links are down in the description. Ready, Set, Shag premieres every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. We talk to some awesome creators. Next, I think I don't know who we're talking to next, but the Midweek Hump is coming back next week. So make sure you guys are a part of it. That's 9 p.m. Mountain Time here on YouTube and over on Rumble. So join locals. There's a lot of awesome stuff over there. Exclusive interviews that aren't on YouTube are over there. And you guys get to be a part of that. So thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.